Hello and welcome everybody to another workshop courtesy of the Home Depot. I'm Ron, this is Mike, and in today's workshop, we're going to show you how to install that window and that portable AC unit. But before we actually get into the nitty gritty of that workshop, Mike, run us through that overview.
Absolutely. Like Ron said, we are going to talk about a window and a portable AC unit, something you may not be that familiar with. We're going to talk about the differences of both. We're obviously going to install them both, like Ron said. We're going to talk about choosing the best unit for your space and some of the things that you need to consider. Things like the BTU, the wattage, the square footage that the unit is appropriate for, and inverter technology versus a traditional unit. If you've never heard of that, we're going to talk a little bit about what that means. We're also going to walk you through again all the steps of the installation, and then we'll talk a little bit at the end about maintenance, how to make sure that these units last as long as they can.
So let's get into window or portable. There's two types of AC units to consider. Now, the window unit, that traditional window unit, is going to sit directly on the sill. It's designed to cool a room, not a house, but a room. They're super easy to put in, super easy to take out. Just a few steps to install them, and you'll have a cool room. They're easier, and oh goodness, they're amazingly less expensive than an entire HVAC system. You can use them all summer. They deliver cool air, they can vent out hot air, but you have to place them near an outlet. Now, there's going to be a small presence, like a small footprint inside and outside of your home. So be aware of that whenever you're choosing them. Some of them have a better appearance than other ones. They're smaller, bigger, whatever that may be. Winterizing your unit is something that you can do because you don't have to remove it. Now, in the one that I've had previously, Mike, I actually removed it during the winter time, closed up, packed it away, and brought it back out in the spring. Now, Mike, there's some differences with the portable unit. You want to run us through those?
Absolutely. But I did want to say real quick, think of a window unit. Like Ron said, it's not intended to cool a whole house. Its purpose is like added AC. Let's say that you have a room that's maybe over a garage and it's not well insulated and it never cools down like the rest of the house. That's a perfect situation where you might want to add a window unit. Or maybe you've got, like a room over a garage that's like a guest house or like a utility room or a workshop. Perfect place for a window unit. So again, don't think of it as something that's going to cool your house, but it's something that you can add to the system that you already have to cool those places that just don't cool enough for you.
It's awesome that you mentioned that because the one place that I actually put my actual unit in was my garage. So I'm a kind of workshop in my garage, so I do a lot of carpentry and things in there, and it does get awfully hot in my garage. So I actually got the window unit, put it in my garage. So during the summer when I'm out there working, I'm working in a cooler environment.
Right.
Of course, I'm removing it in the
Well,
wintertime.
and as you know, not everybody in your family enjoys the same temperature all the time. Some people are just naturally more hot in their room. Maybe you want to supplement the system of the house that's perfect for everybody else, but gives them the cooler air that they desire. But like Ron said, there is a difference in a portable unit. Now, some of you may not be that familiar. There's one here behind me. These are meant to not sit in the window. They're designed to sit on the floor. What makes them really unique is they are portable. They're not installed, semi-permanently like a window unit is. There is some installation involved, but it's minimal, and they're designed to be portable so you can move them around the house. Let's say you have more than one person who doesn't like the temperature of the house, and maybe you don't want to install a window unit, or maybe you live in a home where there's maybe an HOA restriction on putting in a window unit. You can put one of these because it's inside the house. You don't really see it from the outside. The setup is much less involved. We'll walk you through that in a few minutes. A lot less involved than the window unit. But again, just like the window unit, you want to make sure that you put it near a window that has an outlet near it because you've got to plug these things in. It's the same with the window unit. What you don't want to do is not really pay attention to where the plug is, install it, only to realize there's nowhere to plug it in. You got to make sure that you choose a window where there is a plug nearby, because what you don't want to do is connect these to an extension cord. That's really suggested that you not do that. So you want to make sure that there's an outlet somewhere near the window that you've chosen for either of the units.
What I really like about the portable unit is I mean, we've all went somewhere on vacation. Where do we got an Airbnb or we got a cabin in the woods and stuff. And I'm a bit of a glamper, Mike. I like to camp, but I like to glamp, which means I like to stay cool as well. So taking that portable unit with me, which you absolutely can, and putting it in that cabin, whatever, will keep that cabin cool without having to worry about that AC.
Now, Ron, what about choosing the right one for your space? What are some of the things you want to consider?
Well, first of all, you want to consider, based on what you're looking at, the needs, what you're kind of looking for, whether you want to install something, set it up and forget it, like a window unit, or that portable unit, a whole lot less involved, very minimal floor space. When you're thinking about the unit, you also have to think about the size of the unit. Um, how much AC do you need for that square footage? We're going to kind of get into that in just a minute. So we've talked about choosing the right unit. We've taken a look at the two types of units that are out there. Other things to think about as well to help you choose. I've alluded to the BTUs involved in square footage. Mike, why don't you kind of take a deeper dive into that?
Yeah, what you want to think about is the square footage of the room or the space that you're trying to cool and which unit is appropriate for that size space. Now, most of them are going to say on the box, this air conditioner is good for a room this size. You want to pay attention to that. What you don't want to do, it's a common mistake. Sometimes people don't really notice that and they install it only to realize it's not cooling like they want it to. Well, it's not intended to cool a room that big. It's just never going to be able to do that because they're made to cool a certain size of room. So it's really important you pay attention to that. And it's based on the square footage. So like Ron said, the power of the unit is based in BTUs. What that stands for, it's British Thermal Unit. And that's simply a measurement of the energy needed to remove the heat from an air and cool it. So that's sort of a measurement of how well it's going to be doing that. And ACs, again, will tell you how they're going to cool a room and how big of a room they'll cool. But sometimes they may not. Sometimes they'll just have the BTUs listed. Well, if you don't know what size room that level of BTU is appropriate for, that's really not going to help you. You're not going to know. So here's something that you can figure out. 20 BTUs are needed to cool 1 square foot. So let's say you have a room that's 400 square feet. You would simply multiply that by 20. That gives you 8,000 BTUs. Now you can go over that if you want. You just don't want to go under it.
Mike, there's also some other things that are going to impact the total effectiveness of your AC unit. When we think of those factors, ladies and gentlemen, let's just think about the insulation of the room. Mike alluded to that before. You might have that room that has no insulation. It may make that unit work a little harder. So you might want to up the BTUs on the unit that you're looking for a room with less insulation. It's going to actually affect it. Think about the venting portion. Where are you going to vent that out? So that can actually impact it as well. Direct sunlight. I have a room in my house that my wife loves to open up all the plantation shutters. Now it happens to sit on that side of the house where all the sun's blaring in all day long. What she doesn't realize is much as that she loves that natural sunlight, that can impact the overall effectiveness of your HVAC or AC unit. And you might have to have a bigger one as well. So you want to think about those things when choosing the appropriate unit for that room, Mike.
Yeah, again, we talked about the square footage. You might have a 40 square foot room on one side of your house that gets no sun. You have a 40 square foot room on the other side that gets a ton of sun. The same AC unit is not going to cool those rooms the same. So like Ron said, a big consideration is the size of the room, but you also need to think about those other factors. That's a case where you might want to bump up the BTUs. If it's a room that you think this unit may struggle a little bit because it's barely enough to cool this size, but the heat factor is something I've really got to compensate for.
So what about power, Mike?
Right. So appliances in general, especially things like AC and HVACs, things that draw a lot of power, they require more power than just standard appliances might. Most window and portable ACs are either 115 or 125 volts, 15 to 20 amps. Those should work on most standard outlets. However, if you have a lot of things plugged into the same circuit in that room, things like lamps or computer equipment or TV, stereos, whatever it happens to be, there's a possibility you're going to be pulling too much energy. It's going to affect the AC.
Right. So what's going to end up happening is you're going to start noticing that the circuit breaker going off and clicking off and turning everything off because it's protecting that line. If you start to notice that that's happening, you're having to reset the breaker all the time, you might want to consider relocating that AC unit to a different line, or limit the number of things that you're using while you're running that AC unit.
Now, larger AC units, we talked about standard ones. The larger units, they can be as high as 15,000 BTUs. That's a lot of power that's going to be needed. They're going to require a 220 volt outlet. So that may require a dedicated plug and breaker for just that AC. If that's the case, if you're running into a lot of tripping of your breakers and you run out of options for how to move and how to adjust, you might want to consult an electrician before you install an extra large AC unit.
For sure. So there's also something out on the market called inverter technology. ACs with inverter technology adjust the temperature to the desired temperature of the room. Just like a central AC or HVAC system, it runs until it reaches that temperature. It's got its own internal thermostat, if you will, and it will turn it off and turn it on based on what the temperature has been set for that room.
And that's different than just a regular traditional AC. You turn it on, it's going to stay on until you turn it off.
Right.
So it's less efficient than the unit with the inverter because that's going to turn itself on and off as needed. But let's say you turn the AC on, you go outside and mow the yard and get distracted, you're talking to your neighbors, you forget it's on all afternoon. Maybe you didn't need it all afternoon, you're not even in the house. So those units are less efficient, or can be less efficient, because you have to literally turn them off, but they don't go off until you turn them off.
And something else that's really, really cool is you can actually get AC units that do both. They cool and they heat as well. So if you are in an area where you don't want to remove it, it doesn't require you to winterize it, and you need some extra boost in the wintertime for heat, we got you covered with that as well.
Well, think about it. We talked about the fact that these units really help in a room that tend to stay a little bit hotter than the rest of the house. Well, obviously, if that's the case, they're also going to be colder than the rest of the house in the winter. So that's a perfect solution. If you've got that extra room, or maybe you've added on a room and it just doesn't stay the same temperature as the rest of the house, this kind of inverter technology with heat and cool is a perfect solution to consider.
And there's an awesome amount of other amazing features that I'd like to go ahead and share with you. I don't like to kind of get up and go across the room and turn it off. Those are the days of my dad making me the remote controller over with, right?
When you're chilling on the couch, you don't
That's
necessarily want to get up.
You got the opportunity to have most AC units today are going to come with a remote control. Some AC units are even come Wi-Fi enabled, where you can control it off an app off your phone. Smart units, they're called, with smart devices. They also have noise levels, or what we call zone levels. You can get ones that are quieter, or reduce the amount of noise coming from the unit. We have some called a U-shaped unit that allows you to use the window to block the noise from the actual condenser or the motor from outside, because that's the majority of the noise coming from the motor that's on the outside of your home. But a traditional unit doesn't allow that window to come down on the unit. This one is kind of shaped like a U in the middle, allows the window to come down in between it. Super cool. Also, no pun intended with the super cool thing, but there's energy savings, there's Energy Star ratings. You can click on the energy guide. It's going to be on every box, on every unit that we actually carry at the Home Depot. You can also get ones that are even built in dehumidifiers if you have a higher humidity area. You can get lots of cool things with AC units.
Now, Ron had mentioned the U-shape, talking about the design of ACs. The traditional window unit, like you said, sits on the windowsill and the window comes down, helps hold it in place, but only meets it at the top of the unit. So the window is fairly open, based on the size of the AC unit. But there is this kind of technology called a U-shaped design. And Ron mentioned it, but it's not a square. It's not a total square like a normal AC unit. It does have sort of a split in the middle. So the window doesn't stop at the top of the unit. It actually goes down into the body of the unit. Not all the way, but there's a U shape in the middle. If you're looking at the unit from the side, there's this channel in the middle that allows the window to come down. It makes it a little bit more secure. The window is closed more, so it's a little bit more efficient. It does cut down on the noise. Here's the other advantage though. In a normal AC unit, the window is attached where it meets the AC. It can't move. On these units, the window can open a bit. So if there's like a nice spring day where you don't need the AC as much, but you want to open the window a little bit, you can do that because it's not locked in at the top.
That's just an amazing feature of that unit.
Yeah, but a 50% on average, 50% reduction in the noise, because the noise is generated in the motor, which is generally outside the window. The more closed that window, the more you're going to cut off that sound a little bit. So it helps.
50% is huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
So let's go ahead and kind of just get into the install process of a standard window AC unit first. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is understand what tools we're going to need. Now, generally, it's really simple. You're not going to need much more than maybe a Phillips head screwdriver. You might need an adjustable wrench. You're definitely going to want a level. You're going to want a tape measure. You're going to want some form of cutting utensil, whether it be scissors or a utility knife. And you're going to need a pencil.
Right. Now, the main parts of an AC, just so you understand, because we may reference these as we're talking about the install, obviously there's the AC unit itself. There are left and right curtain panels. So if you think about when the unit goes in the window, it's not going to fill up the window completely, but there are panels normally on the sides that are used, and we'll show the installation of this when we do the install, but it just fills in that extra space that's left when you close the window, but you haven't closed and sort of covered up that entire opening of the window. The parts that the AC unit itself doesn't fill, those fill in that space. There's also various support brackets, because obviously an AC unit, it's not the heaviest thing in the world, but there's some weight involved. So, and they're all a little bit different. The brackets may look different. They may be installed in a different place, but they'll all have some kind of a bracket that kind of locks it in place. There are screws that come with it to attach those brackets. There's also always some kind of a foam insulation underneath where the window AC sits on the windowsill, usually at the top where the window meets maybe the top of the AC. And then in the gap of the window itself, when it's open, you can add some insulation to the top to kind of just make it nice and, weatherproof. And then there's also sometimes a heat-proof foam that goes over top of the panel. You can see on this side, we actually have one installed. You can see the venting, the panel of this one, that it's an accordion kind of a thing. On this one, you can't see because we've already installed the heat shield. So just some of the things that you'll see as additional equipment on your AC unit.
Now, some things to be aware of. Now, before I get into the obstacles outside your home, let me just go ahead and say this. Not all windows, Mike, are created equal, right? So you're going to get a hardware kit generally that's going to come with the unit. It's going to have screws and support brackets. But based on the way your window is, you may have to be a little creative at times when it comes to actually securing it. So be aware that you might need to get maybe a longer type of a screw of something like that, or maybe a larger type of a bracket. So just be aware of those things as well. Now, when we think of the outside of your unit, where maybe the outside environment, understand that you want to keep the unit at least 20 feet from, say, a fence, a wall, because you do not want heat to be blocked as it's expelled. Because what this is going to do, Mike, is it's going to reduce the overall cooling efficiency of the unit. One major key point that you need to understand about a window AC, they're all going to be installed slightly tilted backwards. Now, why is this? Well, because as the unit's running, and it's making cool air inside and expelling hot air, it's also going to have some condensation, some water that's going to flow outside of the unit, and you want the unit tilted slightly so that the water flows out and away from the unit. If it is level, the unit will not expel the water. You don't want to do that. And finally, that unit should be a minimum of 30 to 60 inches above the floor.
Now, like Ron said, windows are not all the same. So what you don't want to do is assume when you put it in the window that it's tilted right, because it may not be. When you put it in your window, it may just be sitting flat. You want to make an adjustment for that because, like he said, the outside part of the unit, the part that's outside the window, needs to be about 1/4 of an inch lower than the part that's on the inside. So if you install it, that's where the level is going to come into place that we mentioned earlier. You want to put the level on there and make sure that it's tilted a bit so the water can run down and out of the outside of the unit. So something to think about. Don't just assume that it's placed right just because that's the way it sits in your window.
And then the last couple things we're going to discuss before we get into this install, because that is why you are here, make sure that you install the unit close to an outlet. Most of these cords on these units are going to be a 6 to an 8 foot cord. So you're going to have plenty of play to make sure that it is absolutely plugged in. And always, 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 even though this installation is going to be step by step by step, you have to read the manufacturer's instruction because, ladies and gentlemen, there are differences unit to unit, window to window. So pay a specific attention to that, along with that hardware and those screws that come with it, like I said before, because they're going to have specific uses. One's not going to be used for one thing versus another thing because they're not all intended to go in the same places.
Yeah, a couple of things on that. These screws sometimes might look the same if you don't pay close attention. One might be just a little bit longer than another one, but it's designed to do a specific thing. So be careful not to mix those up. Don't just grab any screw out of the package and put it in. You're going to run into a problem down the line. So make sure you pay attention to that. And like Ron said, even if you've installed an AC before, even if you're an active DIYer and feel pretty confident, there are differences in all of these different units. They're not the same. Like we said, the brackets are different. The panels on the side, some go in from the side, some slide in from the top. So there's just differences that you want to be aware of. You don't want to get into the installation and realize, oh, I didn't know this was going to happen and plan for that. You just want to at least speed read through it to get an idea of what may be different on this unit than maybe one you've done in the past.
I think it's about ready to get started.
Let's do it. We are ready to install the window AC and the portable AC. So first, you'll need to measure the opening where you will be installing the unit to get an idea of what size unit to buy, obviously, and how it will fit and sit in that window. This will also let you estimate how much weather stripping or sealer you'll be using. Most of these units come with sealer, but sometimes you might want to get some extra depending on your window.
Now, window sizes appropriate for the particular unit are called out in the product details online and on the box of the AC unit. When measuring, try using a measuring tape with the width of the tool labeled on the side. Then when you measure, don't bend the tape measure. Simply add the length showing on your measurement to the width. This gives you the total size of what you're measuring. Bending that tape measure will result in an inaccurate measurement.
Now, it's a good idea to mark the halfway point of the opening and measure half of the width of the unit itself to the left of that center mark and to the right of the center mark. That will show you where to place the unit and make sure that it's in the middle of your window.
Now, once you've unboxed your unit, you will need to install a few parts. Most importantly, the side extender curtain panels. These will fit on the side and extend to create a seal around the opening of the window.
On this unit, the panel rests within a metal frame at the top and the bottom. The frame of the panel itself slides into those channels from the sides on the top and the bottom of the unit. Some panels slide in from the top. The inside edge of the panel on this one attaches to the AC itself with screws. You'll wait to attach the outside edge of the panel frame to the window itself after the AC is installed.
Next, you'll cut the window sash seals to fit. Peel off any backing and attach the adhesive side of the foam to the underside of the window sash and the bottom of the window frame.
Next, you'll install any support brackets that are required to be put in before you install the AC. Some will go in later. You'll start by drilling pilot holes. This ensures you don't split the wood of your windowsill. On our unit, they're installed behind and butted up against the edge of the inner window sill. Check your instructions for specifics on your unit. These brackets help hold the AC unit securely in place.
It's important for you to make sure that when you drill a pilot hole is just designed to kind of give some relief to the area that you're actually going to be drilling into. What does that really mean? Do not use the same size drill bit as the actual screw intended. Make sure you're using 1 or 2 sizes smaller than the screw that you will be actually putting into the unit.
And think about it, the hole that you create when you make the pilot hole, when you put in the screw, the actual screw, it's screwing into the insides of that hole, not forcing its way into the wood, which is why if you don't do a pilot hole and you just screw into the windowsill, it could split the wood to make that opening that you should have already done when you pre-drilled. So just something to think about. You don't want to have a split in the windowsill of your window.
You probably lifted the unit at some point, so you know it's heavy. Make sure you have someone to help you lift it and hold it in place firmly until the window is lowered down onto the AC. You don't want to risk your new AC unit falling out of the window. Use your placement markers, set the AC so it's centered and stabilized. The front edge of the bottom guide of your AC lines up with the back edge of the L brackets that we just installed. Bring the window down so that the front edge of the upper guide is in the front of the window. Make sure the AC is level and is tilting slightly downward on the outside.
One additional point to make, it's not a bad idea to have somebody standing outside the window just to make sure, hey, they're going to help you lift it and place it in place, but they're also going to help you support it from the outside so again, it doesn't fall out. Even if you're upstairs in your house, if you can access that window, if there's some kind of roof, around that window, if it's inset, to the house, not a bad idea to have somebody standing out there because again, it doesn't happen all the time, but it can happen. If you're not paying attention and you're distracted, you can lose control and it can fall out the window, which you obviously don't want to have happen.
And when we're thinking about being out on the roof on the second floor, let's make sure that we use all safety precautions. If you rope yourself in so that you don't want to fall off that roof,
Right.
We want you to be safe.
Now extend the guide panels to fill in that window opening on the sides of the AC unit. Use the provided screws to secure them to the window at the top and the window sill at the bottom.
The unit will come with some sort of flexible seal or weather stripping. Trim it to fit the frame of the window opening as instructed in the installation guide. This step is important because you are sealing out the hot air created and being vented from your unit, as well as the outside air. The better the seal, the cooler your room will be and the less work your AC unit will have to do.
Follow the directions from your unit for specifics on how to further secure it. This will probably involve screwing the provided brackets into your window and may require you to pre-drill, again, like we mentioned. Now, there may be additional support brackets to install. Our unit requires one at the top of the window to prevent broken glass or damage to the window itself. One quick note about those security brackets that we've been talking about, especially the ones at the top and the bottom. Not only does it provide a little bit more security for the AC unit itself, it also provides security in general because it prevents the window from opening.
Now that the unit is in place and the curtain panel frames are attached to the window, you want to measure each curtain panel and cut the heat-proof foam to fit over each panel. Now, the size of the panels may differ slightly depending on how well you centered the unit.
One thing on that real quick, like on our unit, the panels that we got were really, really wide because it could be in a really wide window. You might need to extend those panels all the way. But as you can see on this unit, when it's installed, we didn't have to extend this very far. So we measured the size that we're actually having exposed once the AC is installed. And that's what you can see on this side. That's the size we cut that heat shield to kind of go on there. That can vary though, based on your window. So this actual panel comes much larger than what you see there, but you'll have to cut it if your unit comes with those to make sure that it fits whatever size that panel ends up being after you've installed your AC.
And then of course, the very last thing that you're going to do with this unit, you're going to plug it in and you are going to turn it on to make sure it's cooling properly.
Yep. Now we're going to quickly move on to the portable unit. Like we said earlier, the installation is a lot less complicated. There's not as many steps, but there are some things that you have to do to make sure that it works properly.
So they're super easy to install, like I said before, just like that window unit. They need to vent hot air. This is a crucial step. You have to ensure that they're venting outside. You do not want to not vent them because then you're going to find out that they're just pumping hot air straight back into the room, right? So they're going to require some kind of adjustable window fitting like the one that we're going to be using. Don't assume that your unit will include this one. We had to purchase one separate.
Real quick, I do want to say that that is so very important because as a company, we do get a lot of portable AC units returned to us because the customer just plugs it in and turns it on. And guess what? The room never gets cold. The unit is trying to cool, but anytime you have an AC unit, whether it's a unit in the window or a portable unit, it's also creating hot air that's being expelled or should be expelled from your house. If you don't vent that hot air out of the room, the hot air is in the same room as the cool air. So the unit's working, it's cooling, it's trying to cool, but it's also creating this hot air. So you're never going to get the room cool.
First, complete the exhaust hose assembly. These steps will be varied based on the unit you purchased. You will usually see an exhaust hose and two connection pieces, one that connects the hose to the AC unit and one that connects the hose to the other end and sits in the window and provides the exit for the hot air being expelled.
Now, the exhaust hose included with your unit will be designed in accordance with the specifications for that unit. You want to keep the hose as short as possible to prevent the buildup of hot air in your exhaust hose.
Now, the final step is to connect the exhaust coupling with the seal plates that will adjust to fit the opening of your window. Hook up the vent hose to the fitting in the portable AC. Then you're good to go. Now, you may want to use weather stripping or some type of a sealer to create that perfect seal. You may also want to add brackets like we did on the window AC unit itself to secure that window in place so the window cannot open and close. Finally, sometimes the exhaust kit comes with that portable AC unit, and sometimes it must be purchased separately. Make sure you check the specifications of the model you're purchasing, and that's pretty much all there is to it.
Now, one last note on the portable units. These units, like Ron said, just like with the AC unit, they do create condensation. Most of them will have sort of an internal bucket, and that will normally hold the excess water. Once it's full, most of these units will have an indicator light or some kind of a sound that will tell you that's full of water, it's got to be emptied. So just look for that, listen for that, make sure that you read the instructions to see what your unit has, because that condensation will build up and you've got to empty that on a somewhat regular basis. So something to be aware of. On this unit, there is a nut in the bottom that must be unscrewed to reveal a water plug that you pull out to drain. So there's not a pan necessarily that comes out that has to be drained. The actual unit just drains itself. So again, there's differences with these units. Just make sure that you read and understand. You got to do it, but there's differences in how you do it.
And then finally, AC units have filters that must be cleaned and replaced as needed. There's also some maintenance involved. Like everything else with moving parts, AC units require some basic maintenance to keep them running at peak performance. Spoke earlier about that air filter. Air filters are for intake. They keep dust and particles from clogging the motor and the fan. They don't need to be cleaned often, but they should be checked at least once a month to get an idea of how often it's needed.
So just like with the HVAC system in your house, as you know, there are filters that go in there, and those have to be changed on a regular basis. If you have one that's not cleanable, you have to take it out and replace it. But sometimes HVAC units have ones that can be cleaned and replaced once they're dry. Same thing on these. They have air filters because there is air moving through them, and as that air is pulled in, all kinds of other stuff is also pulled in. That's what that filter does. It keeps those contaminants, dust and mold or whatever, from entering the unit itself. But again, over time, they clog up and you've got to clean them. So make sure that you understand, based on your unit, how often you should be checking those.
One key point of reference is they got to be completely dry once you install them back. So here's a pro tip for you. So once you take that little air filter out, you wash it with maybe some just dish detergent to clean it up real good, and then it's really wet and you want to dry it off. Take your blow dryer. Or blow dryer in the house, take a blow dryer and just kind of blow dry it. You don't want to install these when they're damp because then it's going to actually build some mildew and possible mold buildup inside the unit. So you don't want to do that.
Now, on the window units, there is some cleaning that you want to do on the outside. Cleaning the coils. There's a section on the back, the AC evaporator. That's where that hot air is being expelled. So not only is that outside part of the AC exposed to the elements, dirt, dust, cobwebs, whatever happens to be out there. But also there's contaminants that maybe the filter didn't catch that are being expelled as well. All of that stuff starts to build up on the outside of your unit. If it starts to gunk up and accumulate too much, it's going to obviously affect the efficiency of the unit doing what it's supposed to do. So you want to maintain that and clean it on a regular basis. There are just aerosol foam cleansers that you can do. One thing to be aware of, those are a little bit, not fragile, but they can bend. So you want to be careful when you clean them. You don't want to just rub them and scrub them very hard. You can start to bend the metal that's back there. So just be careful how you do it, but you want to do that on a regular basis. Maybe clean it before the summer, before you start using it all the time, and then check it on a regular basis. But obviously, again, at the end of the season, before you kind of winterize and cover it up if you're leaving it in place.
Mike, do me a favor and grab that paintbrush for me right there. That paintbrush?
Right here?
Yeah, grab that. So Mike made a very good point. Going to go ahead and re-emphasize the point of the fins in the back. They're aluminum, so they bend extremely easy. So whenever you are cleaning them, you don't want to use a hard bristled brush of any kind. So after you put that coil cleaner on, and you can just actually rinse it off with a water hose. If you're going to kind of do what I call a dry cleaning, you just want to clean up, you want to get a soft bristled paintbrush like this. And then you're just going to kind of clean out the actual fins in the back and keep it clean, keep it running really good.
And think about this. Whether you use a brush or a rag or whatever you use, you want to go with the grain, if you will. Go in the direction of those little fins. You don't want to go against them because that's when you're going to start bending them and affecting them. Make sure that you go in the direction. They're usually horizontal, so you want to go left to right, not up and down.
And then some other considerations just to think about. We'll talk about winterization. Do I remove the unit or do I place a cover on it? Well, the good news is there are covers out there for you to keep it unexposed from the elements. Or, of course, you can take it out of the window, then you can shut your window. The choice is really yours. And then we have something called a support bracket. Now, we actually have a support bracket here. We'll go ahead and hold that for me, Mike. So support brackets are intended to help support the unit from the outside depending on the actual size of the unit. It is a good idea to get a support bracket if your unit is, let's just say, larger than 10,000 BDUs. The bigger the unit, the heavier the unit, the more stress is on the window frame itself. This helps alleviate it because this is actually going to be screwed down into the window sill, and then the bracket is going to be placed outside the house. So this is going to sit up against your house, and it's going to take a lot of pressure off of everything else that's holding the unit in place. So something to think about. Most AC units aren't going to come with an actual additional support bracket. Well, once again, it is an accessory that can be purchased separately.
And another note, just know that they're not required really on any unit. You don't have to have them. But like Ron said, the heavier and bigger the unit, for just the peace of mind, you might want to add some support underneath it. And again, this goes underneath the unit as it sticks out of the house. It goes underneath to support the weight. And they come in different configurations. It could be one or two. It could be a series of things that you put under there. But it's just something to consider if you're worried about the weight of that unit and want to provide a little bit more stability. And as far as winterization, you don't ever have to take the AC unit out of the window. And depending on your window and how much you struggled, some might be harder to install than others. You may not ever want to take it out, and that's totally fine. But if you live maybe in the Northeast or somewhere where the winters are pretty harsh, there's going to be any kind of little minimal opening that's around that unit. It's going to be a chance for cold air to come into your house. You can deal with that. You can add some insulation, some plastic wrapping. You can cover up the unit itself. But just know, you can take it out if you want. Most people probably aren't going to want to, but you can deal with whatever issues you have with the cold weather on the outside so you don't have to take it out.
Last but not least, how about some security tips? Last thing you want to do is put this awesome unit in, and then it's a security problem for your home. Maybe add a sliding window lock. You can get those. You can get a window sensor alarm that can actually stick right to the window, letting you know if anybody's messing around. There's tons of different types of cameras. You can put a camera on the outside of your home, actually pointed right down at the window unit. That is a good thing to consider. Different braces or secure braces that can actually screw straight into the window frame so that window cannot be open and that unit cannot be taken out.
And think about the placement in the room. If you've got options as far as how many windows you have and how many outlets you have in a room, maybe one of the windows is on ground level, but another window maybe is a story or two up because of the way your house sits on a hill, perhaps. you might want to choose the window that's further off the ground so it's just harder to get to.
That's right.
Something else to think about.
So we covered a lot of stuff today, ladies and gentlemen. We talked about the window AC unit. We talked about a portable unit. We talked about the basic information, how to choose, install, the size recommended, maintaining. Now you're ready to go out and choose and install that new AC unit. But there's only one thing left for us to do, Mike. What is that?
Well, first of all, we hope that you found this workshop beneficial. Just like all our workshops, we do these to help you, the homeowner, be the best homeowner you can be and do a lot of projects yourself. So we hope you got a lot out of this and you're ready to at least consider putting in an AC unit if that's what you need. But be sure to register for other workshops. We have tons of different topics to consider. So check homedepot.com and just look for the list of workshops that we have available. But on behalf of myself, Ron, and all of the other trainers here at Home Depot, we want to thank you for joining us today. Good luck with your AC project. And of course, thank you for shopping at the Home Depot.